Go ahead.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qala rabbi ishrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. For our guest, all I was saying was a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and asking God to give me bravery and strength to give this topic and help to clear the knots out of my tongue so I can be clearly understood. Because I want to make sure that everyone understands. And this verse comes from the Holy Quran. Musa alayhi salam spoke these words when he was asked to be a prophet. And he needed help and strength. And so do we when we talk, especially in front of the people, inshallah. So the topic today, the history of black voices for Palestine. A lot of people don't understand where that comes from. And the reason why I developed this talk is because we have people who say that the black person in America has turned their back on their Jewish allies. We have betrayed our Jewish allies. And what are you doing? You're being led by terrorists, so you're being led by communists. What are you doing when we survived with you and worked with you the entire time? And I would like to say very clearly and right up front, no one can purchase the allyship of the African American. No one can purchase our allyship. You either do it for the right reason or you don't. And there's no alliance forever based on that. It's only if you're doing justice and you're doing the right thing. So I just want to make that clear. And this is why I developed this talk to get into this issue. So the issue with African Americans, and I'll start with the African American struggle. Now, what I want you to imagine is the mind of the African American in the struggle. The mind of the African American struggle, and out front, I want you to see Palestine. So Palestine and the African American struggle. So the African American struggle, of course, is built off of slavery here in this country. Slavery, oppression, brutalization, massacres, murders is built off of that. And what is our main motto? Our main motto is freedom, justice, all these types of leftists, so to speak, all this type of liberty ideas. We want it to be for us and everyone in the nation and in the world. And one story particularly that we leaned on is the stories in the Bible about the children of Israel. Beni Israel, the children of Israel in Egypt, under oppressive nation. And they had to escape, and they needed help. And God helped them and saved them. And we hoped and prayed that someone would save the African American, people of African descent, because we weren't African Americans at first, people of African descent in the Americas. We hoped and we prayed. So this story gave us hope. This story gave us hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God, would save the African Americans. So we had a real strong attachment to this story. Through the 1600s, the 1700s, the 1800s, the 1900s, we had this idea. So what did? We started fighting and struggling for liberation. We fought and we struggled for liberation. And there was a group that formed, the Niagara movement. A group that formed called the Niagara movement. Why Niagara? It was created at Niagara Falls. And one of the founders of this group was W.E.B. Du Bois. This is one of the books he wrote on Black Reconstruction after the Civil War. You can see it's a hefty read. He's a very famous and well-known and well-respected, well-beloved scholar of the black community and African-American person. So W.E.B. Du Bois founded the Niagara movement to fight for the civil rights of African Americans. Shortly after that, this was in the early 1900s. Shortly after that, in 1909, they were co-opted by some righteous white allies, and some of them were Jewish. When they co-opted, it became the NAACP. Now, please understand, our white allies and our Jewish allies came in after we already had an institution that fought for the civil rights of African Americans. We thank them for their support, but no one gave the African American anything. No one gave the African American freedom. No one gave the African American the right to vote. No one gave the African American anything we fought, bled, and died for. And people stood alongside of us, and we thank them. So here comes the NAACP at the moment, and we still have this ethos about freedom and justice and human rights. We still have this ethos. Now, I'm going to fast forward a little bit into the World War II. Well, let me back up before World War II. The Germans, the Third Reich. Now, if you think of the Third Reich, you know there had to be a Second Reich, right, before the Third Reich, and the First Reich before the Second. The Second Reich of the Germans was in Africa, in a place called Namibia. There's a book here, Germany's Black Holocaust, 1890 to 1945. So we had an intimate relationship, people who are Pan-Africanists, understanding what's going on in Namibia. The German-controlled Namibia. So the Second Reich, we had some sympathy about the tragedies that the Reich could do to people. And it was a horrible story about how they basically tried to exterminate. And if you could see this book, and if you ever look up this book, on the cover, there are people who were emaciated. They look like prisoners in a concentration camp because they were set in a concentration camp before World War II. Another book, I like to give lectures by books because I think we all should read and be literate and not just spout off from the heart, which is good, but it needs to be backed up with information. Hitler's Black Victims. Now we're in the World War II, now we're in the Third Reich. Hitler's Black Victims. So we had an attachment to what was going on in Germany when this was going on with the Jews. We had a sympathy. So when the Jews came out of Germany and Russia looking for a homeland, we thought right back to our biblical stories. People need homelands, people need security, people need human rights. It was horrible in any measure. It is horrible what happened to the Jews in Germany. It is absolutely horrible, absolutely terrible. It was a crime against humanity. And some of them fled to Palestine. And Palestine welcomed the early arrivals because everyone should and help them. So then, as we know, I'm not going to go into the Balfour and I'm not going to go into Sykes-Picot. I'm speeding the thing along. We already know about these declarations. But as they started coming in, a lot of trouble started happening, a lot of fighting. We get to 1948. There is an African American involved in the peace negotiations and the settlements in 1948. His name is Ralph Bunche. Ralph Bunche is the first African American to receive a Nobel Prize. Nobel Prize for what? Negotiating the peace in Palestine. But when he had a question, his heart was Zionist. When we started off, we're starting off the black mind, the black ethos is Zionist. It's Zionist. I can't say anything else. That's what it is. So when they wanted sympathy for the Jewish brothers and sisters to go and have somewhere to live safe, we were approved of that. Not only was Ralph Bunche, but also W.E.B. Du Bois, one of our greatest. He supported that. When the NAACP supported it, and a lot of other people. So we are at this point, black Zionists. So then what happens? 1948 happens, and this tragedy occurs in Palestine, the exact same year. A tragedy occurs in South Africa. South Africa apartheid started in 1948. 1948. Why are we saying, I'm saying the 1948 of South Africa happened to us? Because from a Pan-African mind, anything that happens to an African anywhere in the globe affects all of us Africans in the diaspora. So 1948 in apartheid South Africa is 1948 for me. And slavery in America is slavery for other people, other Africans around the world. Just like we think when we think of Muslims, any oppression of Muslims around the world, whether it's Palestine or Yemen or whatever, it is our business. So 1948 affected us in a way. So now we have Palestine here, and we have South Africa at the same time. The African American mind was in South Africa. Seeing all the things going on for apartheid. Apartheid is segregation. It's just different words to say it. Apartheid means apart, separate, tide, neighborhood, separate neighborhood. In America, what do we have? Segregation, separate neighborhoods. America practiced apartheid, South Africa practiced apartheid. They were the same thing in the same nation, based on what? White supremacy. European colonization of people of color. So then when we see that, and we look at Palestine, we say, wait, there's something going on. And our heart starts to change. Our politics start to change. What's going on with this European nation attacking a non-European nation and forcing them into boxes and brutalizing them and destroying them? Some people may say comparing the African American struggle and the Palestinian struggle is not a fair comparison, which I understand. We have a 400-year oppression in this nation with slavery and all these kind of things. But let me tell you, there are absolute similarities in every category when you compare Palestine to African Americans. For example, Palestinians are shot down on the streets, and Palestinians are bombed from the air, right? Okay. Some people say the United States has never been bombed from the air, except the black community. This book is Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. The first time this country has ever been bombed from the air, our white neighbors bombed black homes. They took the prop planes and dropped incendiary bombs on their homes. And if you could ever see this book cover, if you look it up online, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921, it looks like Gaza. It looks like Gaza. So yes, we understand, and yes, we sympathize with our Palestinian brothers, and our hearts are starting to change. And what's happening? When our hearts start to change, our mind with Zionists now is split into two minds. Pro-Zionist, pro-Palestinian. We still have some people who have not moved from pro-Zionist, and they still exist today. But the two minds are now developing. W.E.B. Du Bois, like I said, Zionist. Then he switched his mind. He totally changed, and he supported Palestinians after he saw the effects of this good thing in the heart. I'm telling you, from the African American, it came from a good place. It was a product that happened afterwards that we didn't anticipate. So once W.E.B. Du Bois saw that, and he started writing against the oppression in Palestine. Another thing that was going on, so we're in 1948, going into the 1950s. What's going on in America in the 1950s? Brown versus Board of Education, bus boycotts, all this civil rights movement, voting rights, all of these things are going on, occupying the African American. At the same time, we're talking about South Africa. And at the same time, we're hearing about what's going on in Palestine, but we're focusing on these issues. So, the African American, Palestine, and South Africa. Something else happens. In the 1950s, Vietnam. Now Vietnam happens. In Vietnam, they started drafting people of color, African Americans, to go to Vietnam and die in a country for liberty that we didn't enjoy in this country. We're talking 1950s, 1960s. We can't go to water fountains, we can't go to schools that we want to, public parks, pools. We can't do that stuff here in the United States. And we're going and dying in other countries for that right and that liberty for other people. SubhanAllah. We did it from the Revolutionary War. We did it in the Civil War. We did it in World War I, World War II, Korean conflict, Vietnam. The African American is looking and they're saying, look at more colonization. And then Palestine starts to come more into view. We have South Africa. We have Vietnam. All of these European colonialism of people of color is now coming into clear view in the African American mind. And now you start seeing African Americans championing the quest and rights for Palestine. Like I said, W.E.B. Du Bois, he switched. And in 1956, he wrote a poem. He liked to write poems. He wrote a poem, and I'm not going to read any poems. I'll read one at the end, but I don't like to read poems when I'm talking. Some people do. They read poems and songs. I don't do that. Anyway, W.E.B. Du Bois, he wrote a poem, and it was called Suez, right? Suez Canal. Now remember, the war for the Suez Canal, he wrote and he championed the Egyptian fight against the Suez Canal, and he championed against the European colonializers. He wrote this poem, which signified his change, and his wife, after his death, also continued speaking up for Palestine, W.E.B. Du Bois. When we go into the 60s, it starts to go more, because now, like I said, Vietnam is coming in, and African Americans are being drafted to fight liberty. We see no liberty in South Africa. We see no liberty in Palestine. And we're seeing the African American connecting the dots. Now we hear about the Balfour Declaration. We hear about it now. You know, in 1948, we didn't hear about it. 1950s, it started coming, but we were distracted. 1960s, we hear about Balfour. We hear about Sykes-Picot. And then Stokely Carmichael, who changed his name to Kwame Ture, he started speaking out fervently for pro-Palestinians and the struggles that imperialism and capitalism put on people of color all around the world. And he said how we need to stand with and speak up for the Palestinian. At the same time, Malcolm X, who had already left the Nation of Islam, now he's speaking up. He did his world tour, so did Stokely Carmichael, went to African nations, telling the African nations what the African American is doing, and he went to the Middle East, telling them what we're doing. And he stopped also in Palestine and spoke with the leaders at that time, the PLO. And Malcolm X, he wrote a story, an article, and it was called The Zionist, let me get it straight here. Zionist Logic, sorry. Zionist Logic. What is he saying here? Now this goes into the economics of Zionism. The economic from the US to Israel. For millions, billions of dollars goes to Israel. Malcolm X is saying, what logic is this, that you send all this money to Israel and you cannot help the African American who's suffering in poverty, medical health, mental health, and to this day, we still outrank all other groups in this nation. And you send millions of dollars to Israel and you can't fund here in the US? Now remember, this is 1964 when he says it. 1964, we're still in apartheid America. Still apartheid America in 1964. So he highlights the colonial powers and the colonial oppression, and he highlights what's going on in Palestine, and he's another great figure that's opening up the minds of the average person to what's going on in Palestine and connecting the dots to Palestine, South Africa, and Vietnam. So when he does that, people start paying attention. They were paying attention anyway, but you know Malcolm X, he had a really a high shelf voice that went to all different peoples. And another person who was not partners with, but also in the same organization with Kwame Ture, Ethel Minor. Ethel Minor, she wrote a statement encouraging the discussion of pro-Palestine. She wanted to discuss the discussion to say, why are we, on the other half of our minds, still pro-Zionist when this is going on? Let's open the discussion. Of course, she got backlash for just opening the discussion in the African-American community. But she didn't care. She stood up to the backlash. And they called her anti-Semitic. Anti-Semitic for being anti-Zionist. So Stokely Carmichael responds. He says that it is not anti-Semitic to be anti-Zionist. Anti-Semitism is absolutely wrong. No matter who you are, anti-Semitism is absolutely wrong, and it's a crime against humanity if you harm one Jewish person because they're Jewish. It's wrong. Anti-black is wrong. And if you hurt one person because they're black, you're wrong. Latino or Asian or LGBTQ. If you harm any one person because of these things, you are wrong. And this was Stokely Carmichael wanted to make clear. There is the distinction between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionist. Zionism is a state from the black ethos. It's a state. And from the black ethos, all states are ugly, including this one. From the black ethos, all states are ugly. Israel, South Africa, Vietnam, Germany, Russia, France, Britain, all states. What do states want? States want aggrandizement. The only thing states want is to be more powerful states. That's the only thing they want. You never heard of a state saying, you know what, we just need to shrink. We just need less power. No. States aggrandize themselves. That's what they're made for. And Israel is a state. Israel is not a person. And states can make mistakes. They have. They just have to change course. And everyone is redeemable. Everyone is redeemable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God can redeem anyone, no matter how bad they are. And an example I like to use is the Mongols. I don't know if you guys heard of the Mongols, but they were a terror throughout the steppe area, through Europe, through Africa. They did that, and they went to Baghdad. They destroyed Baghdad, killed millions of people. They were just a really vicious horde. But guess what? Within the Mongols, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala converted some of the Mongols to Muslims. They just destroyed Baghdad, killed millions of Muslims, threw so many books in the river from Islamic studies that the rivers ran black with ink, piled up the heads of Muslims, and Allah changed them and made them Muslim. Anybody can be redeemed. And if you're against redemption, throw Malcolm X out the window. Malcolm X was a drug dealer, he was a pimp, he was a thug. Throw him out the window if you don't think that people can be redeemed. There's so many people. Throw MLK out the window if you think people cannot be redeemed. He made mistakes. So redemption, we believe in, but that is no excuse for doing what's happening in Palestine, in South Africa, in Vietnam. So the brothers and sisters are speaking up, and they're fighting back and pushing back against this label, anti-Semitism. In 1966, the Black Panther Party of Self-Defense, the original Black Panther Party of Self-Defense, forms. And immediately in their platform was pro-Palestine, immediately, right from the door. Now, if you don't know, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense formed out of police brutality, killing innocent black people, shooting them down on the streets. So they started policing our own communities to keep black people safe. Then while they started doing that, they started breakfast programs for children, health clinics, after-school programs. They did a lot, clothes drives, food drives with all these packs of food given out to the black community, and it spread throughout the nation. This is the Black Panther Party, not the Black Panther Party, although they've made mistakes as well. I'm not trying to say that. What I'm saying is the Black Panther Party started in this way, and their initial program was pro-Palestine, right from the door. From the door, it was pro-Palestine, for people who were being oppressed by white European colonialism. So, Martin Luther King, although he was mostly silent on the issue as far as being direct and vocal, Martin Luther King left us some nuggets that we can learn from. He talked about the three evils of society: racism, poverty, and militarization. And militarization is the one we're going to throw towards Palestine. The military occupation of a people, it is oppression of the people, and it is used to denigrate and downplay a people from their human rights, and we can see that now absolutely in Palestine. That the militarization of Martin Luther King's three evils speaks to Palestine. But when he spoke about it, what did he speak about? Like I said, he would speak about Vietnam. But Vietnam is a mirror of Palestine at this time. It is a mirror of Palestine. South Africa is also similar to both of those at the time. A lot of bombs being dropped, villages being raided, people being massacred. Vietnam, Palestine. African Americans are in Vietnam, they're not in Palestine. So now these lines are connecting. And though Martin Luther King, and this is just my opinion, okay, now Brother Yusef is talking as Brother Yusef, just opinion. My opinion is that he didn't feel comfortable speaking it out, but he left the framework for us to say what's going on in Palestine is wrong, and he would be against it if he was alive today. This is Brother Yusef speaking on that. Okay, so Shirley Chisholm. A lot of people don't know Shirley Chisholm. She's an African-American woman who ran for president. She ran for president in 1972. You know she lost, right? You know she lost, right? 1972, this wonderful black queen ran for president. She lost. But here's what happened. When she ran for president, this is the first time someone put pro-Palestine on the presidential level of this nation as a consideration. First time. Shirley Chisholm, 1972, she put it on the presidential level. Before her, everybody was like, what's going on in Israel is Israel. Let Israel take care of it, we're not dealing with it. She said, no, we need to talk about what's going on in Palestine and the Palestinians. She lost that race, and then they went back to business as usual. But Following her comes Jesse Jackson. And you know Jesse Jackson, the Rainbow Coalition. He was with Dr. Martin Luther King. Even when he was shot, Jesse Jackson was there. He's a reverend. He's been in the civil rights fight for decades, all the way up until now. As a matter of fact, last year I saw him, and he was on stage, and he was in a wheelchair. And subhanAllah, he's still energetic for social justice, so much so that he would not let the microphone go. They had to start taking the microphone from Jesse Jackson because he was just talking and he was going, and it was just really funny, but he was just going. He's still in his prime as far as social justice work. He ran for president as well, and he lost, of course. And when he ran for president, on his platform was pro-Palestine. This is the second time it went to the highest level in the nation. It's pro-Palestine, is Jesse Jackson. And he made an appeal, and he wrote against the United States' support of Zionism. No, backlash, of course, right? His was in 79. He wanted America to stop their support of Zionists because of what they're doing to the Palestinians. In 1989, Bishop Desmond Tutu from South Africa. Bishop Desmond Tutu knows apartheid. He lived apartheid. He knows apartheid. And he spoke up at the first Intifada. And he spoke up for the Palestinians. And he spoke strongly. If you ever look up his speeches about Palestine, you will see he's unapologetic. And they attacked the bishop. They attacked him, called him a bishop, called him an anti-Semitic bishop. They called him all kinds of names that I can't even tell you. And he kept the fight going, even though they called him anti-Semitic. And he is really popular. He's a bishop in the Christian tradition, and he still spoke out for Palestine, and he didn't back down one iota. Now, I promised you that I wouldn't read but one poem. I promised you. So here's that one poem, and then I'm going back right to my original promise. So there's another female, and I like to keep a balance, gender balance, when I discuss. I like to keep a gender balance when I discuss anything, because there are no us without you, and there never has been. So the beloved sister Audre Lorde, she's a poet, African American activist, feminist, and she wrote in 1989. Our federal taxes contribute to $3 billion yearly in military and economic aid to Israel. Over $200 million of that money is spent fighting the uprising of Palestinian people who are trying to end military occupation of their homeland. Remember, we're talking about MLK and militarization of people's homelands. Israel soldiers fire tear gas canisters made in America into Palestinian homes and hospitals, killing babies, the sick, and the elderly, encouraging your Congress people to press for a peaceful solution to the Middle East and for recognition of the rights of the Palestinian people is not altruism, it is survival. This is in 89 from this sister. I'm done, I'm not gonna read anything else. So, in 1990s, now I'm bringing you to the 1990s, Nelson Mandela now. Again, does he know apartheid? He knows apartheid. He knows apartheid. One of the things he did is he visited Palestine in support of the Palestinians. And they tried to warn him about being pro-Palestinian, charging him with anti-Semitism. You know what Nelson Mandela has been through. When I first heard of Nelson Mandela, he was already in jail. And I said, wow, Nelson Mandela's been in jail longer than I've been breathing air. It's a long time. He was in jail, locked up, longer than I've been breathing air. SubhanAllah. It made me really think. So when he came out, he was fearless. And he spoke up for the Palestinian people because it was the right thing to do. Like Dr. Martin Luther King said, we need to stay on the right course, not because it's political and not because it's popular, but because it's right. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he came out and he fought that fight and he spoke up for Palestine. And one of his quotes is, our freedom, South Africa, our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of Palestinians. It's incomplete. One of the great supporters of South Africa was Israel, the state of Israel, and the United States of America. And I think, forgive me for the irony, but we are asking a settler colonial nation to help against a settler colonial nation. It's the irony of it. But we have to do it. We have to speak up and fight for the right and ask this settler colonial nation to do something other than that for the sake of what's right. So, from the 1990s, we go to, I'll fast forward to 2000s. I forgot to set my timer to know how much time I have. But we go to the 2000s. And what's happening in the 2000s? One of the things happening is Black Lives Matter, George Floyd. And during the George Floyd crisis, our Palestinian brothers and sisters made a huge mural of George Floyd connecting with what's going on in the US. Why? One, we have a relationship. The Black Panther Party been over there. Malcolm X has been over there. Tutu has been over there. You know, so many people have been over there. Angela Davis has been over there. So many people over there in supporting our brothers and sisters in Palestine that it was natural. It was just a natural family thing to do. So they put up the mural of George Floyd because of the over-policing, militarized policing of the Black and brown community in the US. Where did some of these law enforcement get trained? Israel, the IDF. Now, please don't make the mistake of thinking that African Americans' problems started in 1948. We know this is not true, right? 1619 is when the first Africans came over here, enslaved. But what I'm drawing is the parallel to militarization of a community and the militarization of Black and brown communities, of the Palestinian community and the Black and brown communities. And the brutality that goes on. Our Palestinian brothers and sisters started using the chants of our fallen brother and saying, I can't breathe. Because Palestinians can't breathe. They can't breathe from the blockades. They can't breathe from the injunctions. They can't breathe from the poor water, the poor soil. They're a third world, and if there was a fourth world, that'd be there. Fourth world economy. And when you look at the Black impoverished people in America, third world country as well. Our water, quality of food, our environment, our streets, our green spaces, if we have green spaces. So, you see how all of this comes together. And our brothers and sisters of our Jewish background, which we love, our Jewish brothers and Jewish background, but they will ask, where did the African American go? We supported the African American in their struggle, but now they've turned on us. We didn't turn on our Jewish brothers and sisters, we turned the same face that we had against settler colonialism. The same face against oppression, the same face against inhumanity, the same face against massacres, the same face against murder. That's the face we turn. And that mindset, the African mindset that we're talking about, which was mostly Zionism, out of compassion, became pro-Zion, pro-Palestinian, and now it is mostly pro-Palestinian. And then you can see the evolution of the mindset of African American. Do not be misled by our Jewish brothers and sisters or our Zionist brothers and sisters and say all these quotes about African Americans who support Zionism when we're talking about the early stages. Before we saw what was going on, we had legitimate distractions. South Africa, Vietnam, we had legitimate distractions. But once we caught up, subhanAllah, we did the right thing in our attitude from the Black experience. And that Black experience shows through completely in pro-Palestinian. We reject any harm that anyone does that is against righteousness, against justice, no matter who they are. In the Quran, Allah tells us to speak the truth, even if it's against our own selves. That's why I wanted to start off with how Zionist African Americans were. I had to speak the truth, even if it's against my own self, but to give you the evolution so you can understand how we got from there to here. Allah also says in the Quran, do not let your hatred, do not let the hatred of another people cause you to transgress the boundaries of justice. Be just, because justice is closer to piety. So no matter what, we will not and should not go beyond the boundaries of justice. Our brothers and sisters who are Jewish, just for the sake of being Jewish, should be safe from your hands. Our brothers and sisters who are Christian and pro-Zionist should be safe from our hands. And we should be safe from theirs. Because Allah is not talking only to the Muslims. He's talking to mankind. Do not let your hatred. Now, you might be saying, oh, Allah's talking about hatred. Of course. We're human beings, and we go overboard sometimes. We have to reel ourselves back in. Do not let the hatred of another people cause you to transgress the boundaries of justice that's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I would like to close by also saying that books like this, With My Own Eyes, talking about the experiences and the occupation in Israel, and this is from 1967 to 1973. Perceptions of Palestine is another one. Palestine in Israel, talking about the occupation of Palestine in Israel. Legacy of Injustice. And this one, like I like to go from timelines. This is a great timeline. Palestine, a 4,000-year history. Palestine, a 4,000-year history. SubhanAllah. And then, this one here. Palestine and international law. You know how many international laws have been broken and continue to be broken on our beloved brothers and sisters in Palestine. And international laws that have been broken even for the African American, people of African descent here. One of the things that Malcolm X, before he died, wanted to do is to go to the United Nations and charge America for its abuses of people of African descent. And he was killed before that could happen. Who did that for him? Here's an interesting side note. Who did that for him? Fidel Castro. Fidel Castro went to the UN and spoke up for the African American. Because of the oppression of the Cubans, it's the same as an attempt to settler colonize them. And he spoke up for the African American. SubhanAllah. So, when it comes to what's happening in oppressed people around the world, just like Dr. Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. This is an opportunity for us to stay united, stay focused on what's actually going on in Palestine, and come to some kind of resolution, especially a ceasefire, and all the things that our Palestinian brothers and sisters are asking for to save and spare their families. Inshallah, we stay together. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open our doors. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep us on the straight path, that He could bless us and make sure that we bring these blessings to our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Our ability to walk and speak out and write and call in. These blessings that we're able to do, that Allah gave us the ability to, we should use those blessings for the sake of our brothers and sisters in Palestine and elsewhere. I want to thank you for your attention, and I hope I gave you some things to think about, and inshallah, you will take some blessing from it. And I guess, are we opening up for questions?
Yes.
Okay, so we're opening up for questions, if anyone has any questions. Maybe I just answered all the questions, huh, when I was speaking, mashallah. No, yes, brother.
One of the book you said, Israel in Palestine.
Yes. No, Palestine and Israel?
So that's the opposite.
It should be. Yeah, I think,
The title
yeah.
doesn't change.
Sometimes when people write like this, they do it for to be provocative. So I can't say why they chose that title, but they did it to be provocative. SubhanAllah. I didn't write it. So.
It caught his eyes, so.
Yeah, mashallah. It was provocative. Yeah, it did its job. Mashallah. Mashallah. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam.
So I like that you opened with, you have a wide, looks like array of books. I've been reading this book, Black Power in Palestine, by Michael
mashallah.
Fishbach.
Yes.
It's kind of a newer book, and it was interesting. In this book, it talks about, you kind of alluded to it too, Dr. Martin Luther King actually has been to Palestine. And growing up, we all do reports, and we look up all this stuff. We're in the age of information, yet I didn't even know that he's been to Palestine. He's been to the West Bank. He even became sick, and he was nursed back to health. He was there for 2 weeks.
Mashallah.
And so he came back. I found out that, and this is information that's not. You have to go to the archives. You have to go to like the microfilm. That's where this guy, the author Michael Fishbach, found it. And so I guess my question is, how do we break through this? What seems to be a concerted effort to stifle even, I guess, this innocuous, this isn't even like super important, but it's kind of interesting. My son just did a report on Martin Luther King for his class, and he put this as one of the fun facts in his report, and I don't think anyone knew about that. Like, it's something that was news to me. But how do we break through this, and how do we inform others? There's only one brother, Yusef Miller.
But what's your name, brother?
Waleed.
Waleed. But then there's a Waleed, mashallah. And to have these kind of discussions from your reading of the book, and you express what you read from the book and what you learned from the book. Talking. This is what we need to do, talking. We have to have a lot of forums like this and guides people's reaction to what's going on in a way that is constructive, in a way that will benefit the Palestinian, instead of just barking in the wind. So information like this, for example, like I said, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he was against militarization and occupation of people, settler colonialism. He's against all of that. But for some reason, he didn't speak it out loud. And we know the reason, right? We know the reason. He's talking in the 1960s, okay? A lot of his backers, a lot of his supporters, and things like that. So whatever, Allahu Alam, however he did that, fine. But he left us little breadcrumbs to what he was talking about for Palestine, using, in my opinion, using Vietnam. Because of course it's going on at the same time. Using Vietnam. So if we look at Vietnam, you can just take Vietnam out and put Palestine in. And it would sound the same. Everything would match up the same if you just took Vietnam out and put in Palestine, except for black people going over and dying because we didn't go to Palestine. Inshallah. Thank you, brother. Yes, sister.
I don't know if you've seen the Black Israelites I think they're kind of by Masjid Taqwa. I was wondering if anybody in our community, maybe somebody else knows, does any work with them, or do we know their stance kind of on the Palestine issue, or?
I don't know their stance on Palestine, but I know that their overall idea is very tribal. It's very, and tribalism is a cousin of racism. And we are supposed to stay away from tribalism at all times. So they are very tribal in their way, very pro-black in a way that I would stay away from, unless you're the person that studies those kind of things, and I've looked into them and studied them. They're a branch of the African American experience here in the US. And just so people know, the route, subhanAllah, of Islam to the Americas is through the African. The African brought Islam to America through the slave trade, where they bought and sold and trapped people from West Africa, which was mostly Muslim. So not all enslaved people were Muslim, but a lot of them were, and then they were forced into Christianity, and for the most part, we're Christianity now. But when the light came back on in Islam, and I'll explain it like that, when the light came back on in Islam, and we started coming more out of the box, and we started with the Nation of Islam and into Sunniism, and Sunni Islam and everything like this, a lot of branches broke off. A lot of sects broke off. The 5% Nation, the Israelites, the Hebrew Israelites. Now the Hebrew Israelites are not Muslim. They are not. They don't even claim to be. But anyway, they're more pro-black and use the Bible, but they are not Muslims, nor do they claim to be. Anyone else? SubhanAllah, I guess I did my thing. And well, oh yes, go ahead.
I would just like to make one remark about
Sure.
Martin Luther King's 3 evils of society.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Martin Luther King Institute uses the same word you used for the second evil,
Yes.
namely poverty.
Mm-hmm.
But in his original speeches,
Mm-hmm.
Martin Luther King used an even stronger term than poverty. He called it materialism sometimes,
Yes.
and at other times he called it economic exploitation.
Yes.
And I think that is what really hit the nail on the head. because poverty is a derivative cause. Economic exploitation is the original cause, and we need to be clear about that, in my opinion. What do you think?
Exactly, that's exactly his words, and poverty is an economy of words. So instead of saying racism, which racism can be derived out even further, racism, economic exploitation, and militarism, there's only now 3 words, right? So racism, poverty, and militarism. So it's an economy of words, not to take away or change the word, but it's an economy of words. And then when people study more, then you get into the actual thing that he said. But what did he still mean? Of course, he meant the creation of poverty. So yes, you're right, brother. Thank you. You had a question, brother?
Was it Desmond Tutu who went to Israel and Palestine, and he said, asked, is it like apartheid? And he said, no, it's not like apartheid. It's much worse than what they were experiencing in South Africa. And I forget which one of them it is.
Yeah, where he was coming from, and this is just my opinion, about where he was coming from, is that with the Palestinians, they're militarized in a way that the South Africans weren't. So the apartheid stopped in 1994, when apartheid ended. But the Palestinians, they are militarized in a way that is totally different, not totally different, don't want to say totally different, but in a way that's more mechanized, more modern, more technological in that way. But the bottom line is the same. The bottom line is the same. So I think I would venture to say that he was talking about the refined technological way that the Palestinians are oppressed versus South Africans. Yes, sister.
I know that this just, for me personally, I know I need to do more research, but could you talk a little bit more about why people look towards like MLK as being more pro-peace, not outward like violence, as compared to like Malcolm X? It's definitely shown in that light. Like I'm almost thinking that they kind of make MLK what they want, and people see that.
People have redefined MLK. No, don't get me wrong. MLK was nonviolence. He was about nonviolence, even in the face of violence. He got this from Gandhi, understanding Gandhi's approach to nonviolence and hate and bigotry. But when they try to make him seem like he didn't speak out firm against issues that would get him in trouble, when he spoke out against Vietnam, that's anti-American, according to people. And they called him a communist, and he kept speaking out against Vietnam. So he wasn't afraid to speak out, but he was strategic. Let me tell you another strategy of Dr. Martin Luther King. He knew that the white police would put their dogs in their water hoses and beat them. He knew that was going to happen. He knew it. But he also knew that now the world is bigger. Before Vietnam, you could never see what was going on in another country on TV. You couldn't see it. You had to be reported and they show pictures. You couldn't really see it in real time. That happened in Vietnam. So he used that as a strategy. He used that strategy. Black people had all these incidents happen to them. And then it showed the hypocrisy of this nation, the strategy of Dr. Martin Luther King. So now people in Vietnam are like, how are you trying to get democracy here? And that's your democracy you have at home? In Russia, Germany, all these other places, like, how are you talking about us? And this is how you treat your African-American citizens of your nation. And it embarrassed the nation. So he was very strategic. When you think about Martin Luther King, he's a chess player. He really is a chess player. And certain things he said at certain times, and he said it in a certain way. So he is not this soft, gentle person that will put up with things. No. But the way he communicates it is in a way that it can be digested, and the people on the fence are not afraid. We need the votes of the people on the fence. Malcolm X, on the other hand, in Christianity, and it's no offense to Christianity, my beloved Christians, they're the turn the other cheek kind of philosophy in their tradition, which he adopted and he expanded with Gandhi. In Muslims, we are a self-defensive posture. We don't allow oppression on us. We don't put oppression on other people. We're not supposed to. So we can self-defend. And Malcolm X, he used that because that was what African Americans needed. African Americans needed self-defense. The Black Panther Party is self-defense. We needed that. We needed black people walking around armed and watching law enforcement do what they do. Because they found a person dead who was shot, and they said, well, he resisted. But when they did the autopsy, when they raised the person's hand above his head, that's when the holes were straight. And when he lowered hands, that's when the holes closed. That means they shot him while his hands was above his head. So these tactics that Malcolm X and other people like him were going for, is they say, this is enough of the rocks throwings, this is enough of beating us on the street, we will stand up, which was pretty Islamic of them. But it's definitely Islamic of Malcolm X. So they're both powerful leaders, strong leaders, put their lives on the line, different tactic though. And after the fights and the insults back and forth between Malcolm X and Dr. King, they came together. And my favorite picture of them in a picture together, smiling and laughing, is a very beautiful picture where they came together and they realized that they're just using different tactics for the same goal. Did I answer your question, sister?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes I can go off on a tangent, so I want to make sure. Yes, brother.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
In Palestine, just to clear this, I'm from Palestine from 1948. We are both in concentration camp in Palestine. So the villages in Palestine, you have 4 or 5 settlements are surrounded. Palestinians cannot go to these places where the Jews can go anywhere. You can build. The trash are dumped on the Palestinians. The sewage are dumped on the Palestinians. Even the 1948 are restricted by the Jewish settlers. The land, I had 16 acres. Now suddenly fence, oh, this is military zone. Well, I have papers with it. No, even if you go to the court says the military will decide for whatever. So there is even worse in Palestine because they learn from the Nazi to put the Palestinian in concentration camp to control them and kill them slowly. You know, they have introduced the gang type style in Palestine where they give the Palestinian weapons to kill each other, you know. And that's what's happening in these days. It's not only what's happening in Gaza, but they've been doing it to get rid of all the Palestinians so it can be only a Jewish state, Zionist state.
MashaAllah. This is the tactic of European colonialism. And you'll see with the painful story that the brother just relayed, you'll see that to the indigenous Americans here. You'll see that in the brothers and sisters in Australia, New Zealand, Africa. You'll see this in South and Central America. Let's take America, the American indigenous peoples. When the European came, they started taking up plots and lands and surrounding our indigenous and pushing them where did they want to push them. They used all kinds of excuses, finding gold, finding this, finding that. The more encroachment to ultimately get rid of our indigenous brothers and sisters. But our indigenous brothers and sisters survived, mashallah, and inshallah, and I believe in my heart that our Palestinian brothers and sisters will be free. So inshallah, ta'ala, thank you for that story, brother, and it is a mirror of what European colonialism does in every part of the world. So when people say that it's not a European settler colonialism like other places, you look at all the symptoms of it, and it's the exact same sickness. Yes, sister. Wa alaikum salam.
First of all, just for coming out. It's greatly appreciated.
Why, yeah.
And to not take more from the time, but I'm wondering what would you suggest or encourage as 3, or maybe not even 3, but maybe just one takeaway for the community in regards to what we can continue to do to stay active, to stay, fighting against injustice. Because as much as we have that knowledge, we do have that fatigue in the community, that in the sense of maintaining that community and voicing against the injustice.
Yes, sister, I would say organize, organize, organize. Not everyone can go and march in the streets. We need people on phone banking. We need people on calling and writing letters into elected officials. We need people doing those things. And if you're fatigued from being out in the rallies and hearing all this stuff, take the other route, which you use your hands. right? So we're supposed to speak out against something, right? And if we can't speak out against it, we can use our hands, right? We can use our hands and we can write. So there's all kinds of ways that are allowed for us from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and you can use that as an example on how to make a change here if you're fatigued, like we're talking about. And to organize that though, you just doing it by yourself is one thing. But if you organize a bunch of sisters and brothers and you say, we're gonna do a writing campaign to this senator, to that assembly member, to this president, to the vice president, and we're gonna keep flooding them monthly with these letters in support of Palestine. And then we have some other groups, and you're gonna make these calls to this senator, that assembly member, this president, and make those calls. Then that'll be a way for you to step back from the action live in person and still make progress for Palestine. That's what I would suggest, sister. Oh, why, yeah. Yes, brother.
Yes, could you address how much support Palestinians have? Like we had a march on January 13th in Washington DC, over 400,000 people showed up in support of Palestine, and it was almost a complete blackout on the news. So maybe people aren't aware that. Could you maybe address how much support the Palestinians are receiving here in America?
SubhanAllah, I can't really answer that question intelligently, but I will say that there are forces that want to keep what we do quiet, or address it and label it as anti-Semitic or communist or whatever. So that does happen, and like I said in the earlier part, the irony of us asking a settler colonial government to stop another settler colonial government is ironic, and it makes my head hurt. But it's something that we have to do. It is actually absurd, but we have to do everything in our ability, and the rest is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We tie our camel, and then we let the rest in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to thank you all for coming out. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and open your doors.